Today on Core Conversations, we have Crystal Hadnott. Crystal is the owner of Synergy Total Health and Wellness, and today we've focused on the nutrition side of her business. Crystal was dropping knowledge on how to detoxify our bodies and the best methods to do so. I loved her approach, which was not centered on depriving, but on adding to enrich your fuel. We talked about mindfulness, we explored our relationship with food, and how our childhood informs our eating patterns. Oh, and she teaches Pilates too. Enjoy the conversation.
Okay, well, I am Crystal Hadnott, and my business is a long name. It's Synergy Total Holistic Health and Wellness.
Wow.
And there's a whole story behind the name being that long, but that's for another day.
Yes.
But my business is really kind of like a resource for all as it relates to health and wellness. Okay. I'm personally a practicing nutritionist, and inside of my studio space, I have a medical massage therapist. I do physical therapy in the form of Pilates with clients, and that's kind of it for me. Because for me, I believe that movement of the body and food is where we find healing. So those modalities exist within my business. So you have nutrition, physical therapy, medical massage therapy, which is the movement of your lymphatic system, and nutrition.
Amazing. So do you deal primarily with corrective exercise, or do you have like performance-based clients coming in as well?
I have, because I'm an ex-athlete, I do have that performance clientele, but a lot of them don't realize they're injured when they come to me. So I'm really doing corrective work, which is always interesting because as athletes, you don't even realize you have, like, I'm like, do you realize that one side of your body is a whole inch off? Like, they don't even realize that their alignments are off, and that's why they having reoccurring issues on one side of their bodies, or their performance can't be perfected because their body is just not in sync with itself. And so I spend a lot of times, although they thinking they're coming to me to help with their performance, it end up being corrective work anyway.
Yes. Now, I've had some conversations with the chiros and some of our guys around here that work with athletes. And, they've kind of made me think about the fact that sometimes those muscle balances aren't necessarily a bad thing, because you need that imbalance for your sport, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I played tennis from age 5 through college. And because, believe it or not, I have a tall personality. I'm only 5'2". And for a tennis player, 5'2" is like midget status, right? So the fact that I had an imbalance on my left side was a positive for me, because my strength was in the forcefulness on my left side that I threw athletes off, and plus I was faster. And so because I was faster and stronger and dominated one end of the court, it ended up, for me in tennis, being an advantage.
An advantage. That makes sense, because if you're playing someone who has a strong forehand, they figure that your backhand's not going to be as strong, but then you're shocked by the fact that it's balanced in terms of its power. Makes sense. For those who are watching, if you have any questions when it comes to performance, exercise, nutrition, throw them in the comment section as we flow here. I just love to have that interaction. I could see your people on here as well.
Yeah, I have some people on. Come on, say good morning for my people that are on, so I know who's on.
Yes. So you do a lot of workshops, I see, like the detox workshops and programs and stuff like that. Can you talk about some of those programs?
So I'll look at it from what my theory is. So I really believe in a lot of people getting rid of irritants and toxins before we even introduce nutrients to your body. Because a lot of times I tell people we're putting on deodorant without taking a shower. Because everybody starts these programs of eating all these healthy foods, taking supplements and vitamins, but you haven't got rid of the toxins or the irritants that's inside of your body. So the nutrients can't absorb the way they need to absorb, because you're full of toxins and you're full of different irritants that may be within your gut that you don't realize that you have. So,
Yes.
and it's the same thing with exercise. Like you really can't increase your performance until you do corrective work.
Right.
So I really approach people from dealing with the root of their issue first. And so I
Mm-hmm.
do that through the detox programs and really working with your body as a whole from a seasonal perspective. And
Okay.
try to
Seasonal.
introduce people. Well, I tell you, I'm part Native American. And so I on flowing with the phases of the you're cutting out. Okay, we're back.
Okay. There.
All right.
Yeah. So
So I
about
really
the
believe
earth.
in flowing with phases of the earth. Yeah.
Okay.
So really dealing with from season perspective, like summer, spring, winter, fall. So
Yes.
just like foods are in season during certain times of the year, which means the nutrients are higher during those seasons. So we detox the body the same way and
Interesting. Okay.
in that whole cycle. So like your gut detox is best in the springtime. Your
Mm,
skin, which is a lot of times why a lot of people's skin in the summer gets really irritated or they have what they call summer acne, is because your skin is going through a detox phase during the summer months. So really just
wow.
helping people understand how to work in tandem with their body,
Yes.
and feed it foods through the seasons and detox and cleanse it through the seasons. So you give yourself nutrients seasonally as well as detoxing your body seasonally.
Honestly, Chris, I used to think that was just a marketing ploy. Like I didn't realize that
No.
that was legit. Like that was like, it's springtime to detox. I didn't realize that there was
Yeah,
actual a correlation.
a lot of people don't really understand because it sounds like, I know when I first was introduced to it was through my great grandmother. And, I was just like, that's one of those crazy folktale type things again.
Yes.
But when you look at it from a person who, I grew up on a farm and foods and things happen, everything has a cycle. So
Right.
understanding how that cycle works and working in tandem with that cycle started to make sense to me. And then so
Yes.
I started doing just a little bit more research on how everything is processed in this cycle form. And so
Mm.
just really kind of working in tune with your body.
Okay, so then the question came up here about factoring in blood types.
Blood types.
Yes. So do you bring that into account?
Not unless they have some issues. So blood
Okay.
types, I mean, I know it's like a big fad back in the day or a
Right.
trend that, eating for your blood type.
Hmm.
If you have some certain deficiencies, it plays a role because just because of the makeup of a different blood type, you're more prone to have certain ailments and deficiencies. So when you're dealing with from a healing perspective or dealing with a different deficiencies or ailments, yes. But just from a general perspective, no, not really.
Right. And now, a lot of times with these things, they're more descriptive than prescriptive.
Yeah,
So when you look at blood types, for example, is that something where
blood.
it's
That's more of it's descriptive. So it's kind of it's helping you better understand the genetic makeup on the inside of your body.
yes,
And you do that through a multiple ways, and blood type is one of those ways, one of those descriptive markers of understanding your body, but it's not the end all be all. And so
right.
that's what I always want people to understand. It's one way to understand your body, but it's not the complete way to understand your body.
Yes. It's going to sound weird to cycle back to this, but what you're just saying a minute ago about putting deodorant on without taking a shower, I like that analogy of saying understanding how do we detox the body before we introduce the new things and all these different ways. Can you just talk a little bit more about that, just so people understand that? Because like we have just our
Yeah.
exercise people
So
on here, and that's a pretty key concept to grasp.
yeah. And so detox, I always tell people, does not mean go and buy 1,000 juices and go on a juice cleanse. That's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
And it's really about teaching people not how to eliminate, but how to introduce.
Okay.
And so it's adding on instead of taking away. So it's really changing also the perspective of what people look at detox. Because nowadays when we say detox in the Western world, people automatically make an assumption that we're eliminating things.
Yes.
You're eliminating toxins, but you're not eliminating foods. And
Makes
so,
sense.
yeah, so it's really figuring out, okay, taking out those things in your diet that are not seasonal first. Like, so looking at, are you eating things that are out of season, which means that they're not nutrient dense. So remove those out of your diet first. Then when I say look at irritants, we try to figure out like what foods, which is different. And this is where one of the descriptions like blood type, genetics and stuff like that play a role. Food intolerance, like looking at what irritants that are you possibly eating that may not agree with your particular gut microbiome.
Yes.
So we remove those irritants out of your body. So we're removing, through the detox, we're removing things that are not seasonal or nutrient dense, and we're removing things that are considered irritants in the body. And we're introducing more nutrient dense foods to the body.
Gotcha. Yes. And that that little comment just sent 3 questions to the board just around how to introduce those things, and summer detoxes and all those different things. So can you just, how do you suggest that 4-day program or start with your 21 day?
21 day. The 4-day program is for people who are scared. So, because a lot of people are like, hey, I don't know if I'm ready to commit to 21 days of changing my life. So I try to
just call people scared.
Make it like kind of like okay, here's an idea of what you need to do. So that's what the 4-day, or it's for my clients who's been working with me. They've had a consult with me. They have their plan. They go on vacation and they wall out and they come back and they just need something to kickstart them back into their program or a reset. So that's where the 4-day is really for people who are not really ready to commit to 21 days or they need something to just reset them back on track.
Yes.
And get rid of those like sugar cravings that they've introduced back into their bodies and things like that. To really kind of just like clean their slate. So I always suggest, if people are just looking for a way to kind of just like really balance their body out, the 21-day program is the best set. If you're somebody who's dealing with a particular ailment and you're looking for healing, that's when you need kind of more of a one-on-one consultation.
Yes, that
and
makes
a couple
sense.
of my clients are actually on here, which is so cool.
Nice.
Hey. So, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So can you speak to plant-based diets, like plant-strong diets and that sort of thing?
So it depends. So I work with people who are both meat eaters and not. But I also am really heavy on people making sure that at least 50% of your diet is plant-based if you are a meat eater.
50%.
And understanding that, you know, you do have to have at least half your diet should be plant-based, even if you are a meat eater. And I'm a meat eater. So a lot of people just like, and I'm a meat eater because of an autoimmune disease. I actually I didn't grow up being a meat eater. And I didn't start eating meat until I was 38, 39.
Yeah.
So a long time. But anyway, so the plant-based programs are like, say for instance, they want to do the 21-day program. And with that program, I do give recipes, but they're a plant-based diet. There is a plant-based version that I offer those particular clients as well.
Yes. Nice. That's good. Mogul Pilates is asking, if you have finished radiation for cancer, is now a good time to do a 21-day?
Who asked that question?
Mogul Pilates?
Oh, okay. I thought it was one of my clients because I have a couple of clients that are in radiation right now. I was like, I know the answer to that question.
Yeah. Oh,
but, okay. All right. Because I saw a couple of them on here that's in radiation right now. Do I suggest it? I would, but I also would have a phone call with that person first, a quick phone call to see what type of medications they're on, to make sure that we're also making sure we're working hand in hand with the meds they on. So I would first have a quick phone call with them to see what medications they're on or what type of radiation they're on. And if they're doing radiation, a combination of radiation and chemo, or if they just got off of chemo, because all those things matter.
Yes.
before, this, putting them into a program.
Right.
But I do have clients that have been pre, post, during radiation on the program.
Okay, nice. How did you get into nutrition in the first place?
Well, okay, so it's been twofold because I
Okay.
told you I was a lobbyist in my first life.
Yes. And sorry, on the
So,
sidebar, a quick sidebar. I love how you weave in some social justice line in the middle of what did you eat for breakfast? I'm like, yeah. Oh, I didn't think about it. Like you just slide it in, so that's awesome.
yeah. and the people who either been in because I used to teach political science at the college here in Houston. So if you've been in my class, you knew I would talk about food, but I would also, I'm leading a political science class. So, so that's always been kind of like a part of my life journey and style.
Yes.
But I literally knew I wanted to be in health as it related to food as early as like 10 years old, because I was at school doing a family tree, and I realized that majority of my family members passed away fairly young because of preventative diseases.
Yes.
And they were all food related preventative diseases. And so that was like always like a aha. And I was like, I don't want to die at 60. And that was the norm for my family.
Wow.
But the 10 years, the 15 years leading up to 60, they're on all these medications, so it's just a poor quality of life as an adult. And I didn't want
I'm not gonna like that.
And so I was like, I don't want to be on insulin. I don't want to be shooting myself. I don't even like needles, So that's where I knew I wanted to be involved with something. But I thought it was always from a public policy perspective initially, and an education perspective. I was extremely active in my community. It was my godfather was a congressman, for God's sake. So I just knew that the route I was supposed to take was through changing policy and changing education. But I realized when I was going through my own health issue in my 20s, that here I am, I'm educated. I'm working with people as it relates to policy, but I still wasn't getting the questions answered that I needed answered for myself as it related to my own health. And that's where I changed my approach a little bit, and understanding from another perspective, like where can somebody go to outside of a doctor to figure this out? Because by the time you get to a doctor, it's almost too late. Or it's not too late, but the doctor can only give you XYZ. Because I was frustrated because the doctors wasn't answering the questions that really not trained to answer. And I didn't understand that. Like, until my doctor broke it down, I was like, look, I am a doctor of medicine. I am not a doctor of food. Like, that's not what I am. So you're asking me questions that's not, the answer that I normally give my clients. And so I was like, okay. So that's when I got into nutrition from a different perspective as far as nutrition. Yeah,
that's amazing. So then, I used to say, like, for my clients who went to a doctor, and a doctor would give them some really like low level, really safe advice. And I got to the point where I was so frustrated. I was like, these doctors are here just to make sure you don't die.
Yeah, and that's their job.
That's their job. Right, they're doing their job. But now if they have to, I have a nutritionist who's a good friend of mine, a registered dietitian, refer them to you, because I want people to live optimally. I don't want them to live to just not die. Like, I want them to live like up here, not like here, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing.
And that's where I was like, there has to be someone else in that route to kind of help people to get to where they need to go and to understand. Because for me, it was like, okay, I not only now can show you the way, I understand because I've been there personally and did my own fight. So I now can answer questions that I used to have to someone else. And so that's where I really, love what I do, because now I get a chance to be that answer to someone when I needed an answer.
Yeah, I can really tell like your love for what you do. It's just oozing out of you in just the way that you talk about this. So, who would you say is like your ideal client? Like the person who walks in the door and you're like, I would train you for free the rest of your life because this is so fun. I love
My
what you're bringing to the
ideal
table.
client is that person that's completely frustrated, because that
Okay,
was me. Like,
okay.
just like, look, I've tried this, I've tried that, I've tried this. I did what the doctor said do. I'm still bloated. I still feel like crap. I'm not sure why I feel this way, but this is the way I feel.
Mm,
Because that was the confusing part for me. Because when I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, I was a marathon runner, a Pilates instructor, and a nutritionist. And I got
yeah,
diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And I
yeah,
was
that doesn't make
completely
sense.
frustrated, because here
Hmm.
I am with 4 doctors, and I kept telling them, I have chronic fatigue, I have bloating every day,
Hmm.
I can't operate this way, and I don't want to
Yes.
be on 1,000 meds. So my
Hmm.
optimum client is that person who is at that state of frustration, and I
Yes.
kind of am like their guide on the side to bring them through that level of frustration and show them that
Hmm.
there is a way to deal with this, and probably in a non-traditional route. Who's open
Right.
to non-traditional routes? Because you have
Yes.
to be ready and open, because that could be a scary space too.
Hmm.
Because I decided to take on a disease through no medication, and that required 4 doctors for me to see 4 doctors, and they were like, no med. I
Yeah.
was like, no meds. If you're telling me there's no cure for this disease, why would I be taking medication?
Hmm. Right.
And that was my problem. I was like, so I'm just gonna take these meds for the rest of my life, for what? Like, what's the purpose?
Yes.
Like, break down why I'm doing this, and can you tell me long term what kind of effect this have on my body
Right.
internally? And they couldn't tell me.
And they
So
probably
I
couldn't. Right.
decided to
Yeah.
do non-traditional.
Hmm. Well, that speaks to the bigger discussion about us as healthy people taking control of our health,
Yeah,
right? Because I
yeah.
know some of my mentors, same thing, like super healthy, and then you get diagnosed with something because your doctor looks at you, and not that I'm hating on doctors, but there's a sense of you're fine, you'll be okay. So we have to take responsibility for our own health.
And that's where it was with me, because that did my annuals, and blood pressure is great, cholesterol is great, glucose is great,
Hmm.
all your vitamin levels are optimum, everything looks great, your perfect weight.
Yes.
So it was just like, I know you're active, you're a marathon runner, I know you eat well, and at the time I was pretty much raw vegan.
Mm.
So they were like, you're fine.
You're
I'm like,
fine.
no, something's wrong. Like, I'm telling you, something's wrong with me. I don't know what's
Mm.
wrong, but something's not right.
Yes.
And that's where, you know, I now tell my clients that when you go in for your annual, make sure you ask for a complete comprehensive lipid panel.
Lipid panel.
Because because they'll check the norms, but you want to know all your
Yes.
vitamins, your minerals. You want to know your hormone levels, your T levels. You want to
Yes.
know all of it.
Yes.
And if one number is close to being off, and another one is also close to being off, are they correlated to each other?
Those are good questions to ask. Yeah.
That to be explained to you. So just really having them explain those levels to you.
Right. That reminds me of something, Crystal, that I did at 40. Like on my 40th birthday, I set up for a physical with my doctor, and I asked for, like you said, every panel, every blood test, ECG, got the whole nine done, and just being healthy, completely healthy. But I said I wanted it as a baseline.
Yeah.
So at my 40th birthday, I did that. I got everything done. So when I get a physical, it's now compared to not what's the norm on some chart on the wall, but what was I at 40?
Yeah.
right? Because like that's my baseline, not, you know,
Hmm.
what the national average is.
Yeah, because and
Um,
everybody's body is different. Like
exactly.
your body's standard is not someone else's standard.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. And that was, for me, that was part of that, taking control of my health and just understanding what those things are. Because, you know, if you can be within a normal range, but at the low end of the normal range, and that's fine on paper, but you know, you don't feel okay.
yeah.
So then, you know, you got to make your adjustments and
Someone
make those
asked
pivots.
here a while ago, I guess, how do you
Yes.
start in order to introduce?
Yes.
I was like, they keep popping up. I was like, what's that? Introduce different foods back into their diets.
Hmm.
So if they have irritants, I don't know if that person who asked that question is familiar what's called the elimination diet, where
Okay.
basically there are certain types of foods that are natural irritants
Hmm.
to most people's gut in general. And
Yes.
that's based on the standard American diet. Like if you grew up with the standard American diet, which I love that that the acronym for that is SAD.
Right.
Because it is sad. But anyway,
Right. Yes. That's a
but
commentary on itself.
basically, so the number one thing that I normally take out and reintroduce is nightshade fruits and vegetables,
Okay.
because a lot of people assume because they're fruits and vegetables that or herbs that they are healthy,
Healthy.
but they can be something that's healthy that's also an irritant. Like for me, it was tomatoes. Who knew something that's healthy as a tomato can be something actually highly inflammatory and irritant to the gut? And
Yeah.
I struggled with gut issues for over 20 years and didn't realize it into 20 years that it was tomatoes. And I was
Mm.
eating tomatoes on all my salads. Pizza is my favorite food, and I don't understand anybody who eat pizza without tomatoes.
Right.
And and so I didn't realize that until I went through that process of I first go through eliminating nightshade fruits and vegetables, because a lot of people focus on gluten and dairy, but nightshade fruits and vegetables are really high in inflammation and
Yes, that could
cause
be
a
a
lot
big
of inflammation inside the
irritant.
gut.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. And this is all like really, in a sense, high level, like technical stuff, because you know your stuff. So for the average fitness professional who has their people coming in day out, what suggestions would you give to me to give to my clients to know when to refer them to someone like you?
Well, I tell people, if you feel like you're moving every day and you're pretty much eating healthy, but you still don't feel good, that's when you should see a professional.
Okay.
Like, like you can't get those last whatever pounds off, or you waking up, you feeling bloated, or you have this fluctuating chronic fatigue midday. It may be something that you're doing that you don't realize that you are doing that could be a problem.
Okay. That's good. There's a question here from Black Cat Flies Hamburg saying, how do you suggest starting to lose weight after a depression?
Uh, One, be kind. I was telling you that before.
Yes.
Be kind to yourself. As a person who struggled with depression after the loss of a child and my mother,
Mm,
I always tell people, be kind to yourself, because the first thing that generally happens post depression is that you find something else to obsess about. And
fill
a
the
lot of
void.
times you can get obsessive with your health, and you can be too healthy. So I would tell them, one, just take it one day at a time, and don't try to make a complete, like, oh, I'm gonna drop 20 pounds by
Hmm.
XYZ. Don't put too much pressure on yourself, and just
Yes.
really be kind to your body.
Manage your expectations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, Being kind to ourselves is so key. I'm really thinking about that a lot, especially this week. So many conversations that we have, because you can start off with good intentions about doing things that are good for your body. I'm going to make these changes, etc. And then the changes aren't coming fast enough, and then you beat yourself up for not achieving the goals, and then you're in this vicious cycle of trying to do good and then not forgiving yourself for not being good enough.
Yeah, exactly. I tell that to my clients all the time. I was like, look, if you've been eating hamburgers for 30 years, do not try to stop eating it in 30 days. Like that, don't do that to yourself. Like
Yes.
don't do that. Or if you have not worked out since we've been quarantined, do not commit to, I'm gonna work out every day this week. No.
Yes.
Say, I'm gonna find one day to spend time moving my body.
Yes.
And if it's today, if it is today, if it's not, tomorrow.
It's,
Like
right.
really focusing on just having less, I wouldn't say less expectation, but putting zero expectation on what you should and should not be. Because we talk about all the time how people have expectations and definitions of what we should be, but we do it to ourselves as well.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, so what's your thoughts on setting goals as opposed to just establishing habits?
So my first thing I tell people is, like drink water. My clients laugh at me all the time. I was like, look, this is what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on drinking water. Like, we're not going to change the way you eat. We're gonna drink water, because a lot of times, a lot of things are dealt with, even vitamin deficiencies, if we're not dehydrated.
Yes. Right.
And generally, when you start to drink water and you feel hydrated, you naturally have more energy to actually do exercise. You naturally have a better metabolism where your food is processing better. So all the other things slowly fall into place. So I tell people, we're going to focus on that. And we're not just going to focus it on for 1 week. We're going to master it. And let's just focus it on for the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Yes.
And then once you get that down, then let's focus on breakfast, and let's put 2 to 3 weeks until it becomes a habit. Then we're focused on lunch for 2 or 3 weeks, and so on. So really just,
I follow you.
really finding that one thing you want to change, and not just say, oh, I did it, and then add something else, because we do that to ourselves, and that's when we fall in not being kind to ourselves. So really focus on that one thing, and stay there for a while, and just rest in that, and acknowledge that you've accomplished that, and then maybe add something else.
Right. Well, I love the fact that you're talking from a place of adding things as opposed to depriving ourselves of certain things and punishing ourselves for doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. I hear that.
And I tell people, really, a lot of times we're dealing with, and it's, labeled intuitive eating these days, or mindful eating, is that we get caught up on, we punish ourselves because we have oh, I love chocolate chip cookies, and then we punish ourselves for loving something like chocolate chip cookies. But I always talk to my clients from a perspective of, when was the first time you can remember having those chocolate chip cookies?
Right.
And what was the emotion you felt?
Yes.
And when was the last time you had those cookies, and what was the emotion? If it's if it's tied to a healthy emotion, do not deny yourself those cookies. Now, a bad emotion, let emotion and why you feeling the need to eat it now. So really, we talk about the emotions attached to the food versus
the food itself.
the food itself.
Yes, I was going to say mindfulness is one thing, but I've asked my other nutritionist who was on before, the whole definition of relationship with food, right? And that's what you're getting into there, and that's what's yes, because that's so much it.
Because generally, I tell people, we only eat 10 things in our lives, really.
Okay.
For the most part, there's if you look in your kitchen right now, you have 10 items all the time, the same 10 items.
Okay.
And generally when we go away from those 10 items, it's attached to a relationship or an emotion that we have. And you have to figure out what's that emotion or relationship you have to that specific food and the why behind it. Yes. And understand the why. And if the why is a positive why, do not deny yourself it. If it's attached to a negative why, let's deal with that negativity of the emotion, not necessarily even focusing still on the food. Let's deal with the emotion that's attached to it. And naturally the food goes away.
Right. Yeah. Or your relationship with it, right?
Emotions and not our bodies.
Yes. Right. So how do we not become slaves to those emotions, right? Like, I feel like that is the piece that we have to figure out more so than like ice cream sandwiches, like
somebody said ice cream sandwiches.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, I mean, it's like ice cream. You can sub ice cream sandwiches with Pringles or with, you know, a case of Coke or whatever, right? Like drinking whatever it is. Like there's certain things, and it's like to look at what is their emotion attached to it. What is the environment that sets up that craving and all those different things. It's so much deeper than the food itself.
Oh, that's Michelle said ice cream sandwiches. Okay. So that's one of my clients.
Okay. So they're heckling you right now is what's happening.
Funny. I bet you can't eat them right now. With this new diagnosis, you can't eat no ice cream. But we'll talk about that offline.
Right.
Really it's I tell people it's really about with my clients, I have what I call a food mood journal. A lot of people talk about dieting from a perspective of like write down what you're eating, but really I have a food mood journal. So when you eat this food, it's not only mentioning why you ate, you know, that you ate that food, but what was the feeling you had when you ate that food? Because a lot of times we don't even know what our relationship is to food, or we don't really even know our attachment or emotions to food. So really understanding by writing down, like, how do you feel when you eat? Because for me, it came from I grew up when I was young, I got to realize I was poor, but I grew up what was considered extremely poor. So mine was so attached to scarcity. So I did eat, I would overindulge because I didn't know when the next time I would eat initially. When I realized in my 20s, I was like, why am I just like, I'm not even hungry, but it was food in front of me and I would eat it because it was attached to that emotion of scarcity as a child, of not knowing when my next meal would come. So really just understanding like the whys behind, and really just sit with it and like, okay, I'm eating this, but how do I really, really feel right now?
Yes.
Because like, it could be a happy, it could be a sad emotion, or it could be a why I'm eating it. Like all those things matter.
Yes.
To, even like, why did I decide to even have this?
Well, I was going to say with that too.
Like, why did you decide to cook this?
Yes. Yes. Well, even Crystal, like, what about just the notion of I deserve this? I had a tough day, so I deserve this. Like, it's not a happy, sad board. That's the biggest one. Right.
But that's always attached to a childhood emotion. So I love talking to adults about it because it's attached to a childhood emotion. Because I was like, okay, what were you awarded when you were a child when you did good? Generally, you're still awarding yourself that same food.
Yes.
Like your parents was like, let's go have XYZ because you've been such a good girl or you've been such a good boy. We still do it as adults. Like, I've been a good girl. So, and I worked hard and I pushed myself this week. I deserve XYZ. So really even just understanding, and a lot of times you really want that emotion of, it's really saying that I don't feel worthy unless I have this food.
Yes. It's affirming what I've done.
But why is your self-worth attached to that food? So understanding that too, like, why do I think I need this food to celebrate myself?
Yes. Those
Yeah.
are some tough questions to ask yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially right now because we're forced to sit with food,
Hmm.
you know, because
Yes.
we're isolated with food.
Right. Exactly.
And
Exactly.
it's not no longer, oh, I'm going out with friends or I'm having these big large family gatherings. Right now, these last 4 or 5 months, we've been isolated with food and thoughts. And I tell people that's why I had this rush of clients March, April, and I said just stop going to the grocery store because that's that anxiety. Like
Yes.
you have food at home, like you don't have to go to the
Right.
grocery store, like you know, or
Yeah.
like oh my god, I'm gonna run out of food. No, you're not.
No, you're
No,
not.
you're not.
Yeah.
But that's because that's the
Yes.
anxiety of the unknown. And
Yes.
so that unknown emotion was end up being attached to the food that we were eating or the food that we were going to get or the food we were
Yes.
hoarding. You were going to buy foods that you never would have never bought before and that
Right.
you're not going to eat
Right. But just in case.
just in case.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Real yoga cat saying like now that we have 2020 hindsight, we can let go of those past coping mechanisms. Like that's exactly it, right? Coping
Yeah. Yeah.
mechanisms.
That's why I said now is the perfect time. And I'm not just saying this because this is what I do to work with a professional to kind of really have that grand understanding so you can come out on
Yes.
the other side
Hmm.
of having that control, taking your control back and not
Yes.
allowing food to lead your way. Because
Yes.
now you have where people think that they have less control as it relates to food, you now have more control than ever.
True. True. This is a
Yeah.
great time, and there's an ad that they have on TV here in Toronto all the time for a men's weight loss clinic, and their tagline for years has always been, "If you could have done it yourself, you would have done it already.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you could have done it yourself, you would have done it already." So this is a time to break that cycle, and in the same way you come to someone for fitness to break that cycle of inactivity, to think about your nutrition, think about your fuel, think about your mindset, think about your relationship with food, and break that cycle by having someone from the outside look in on you.
Yeah, because I work them through sitting with those emotions that they may have attached to it if they're, like needing that level of support, um, understanding, like, okay, and it's really so basic, but not basic because people think like it's like going to school and you have worksheets, right? And
Yes.
so you really like are going through these worksheets of really figuring out like that true understanding, just like you would for school, and
Yes.
understanding, math concepts or English concepts or history lessons. It's the
Hmm.
same level of understanding when it comes to your emotions to that's attached to what you do.
Right. And our bodies are worth it.
Yeah, you're worth it. You
We're worth
deserve
it.
better. And
Yes.
you deserve to know and have control over your own body.
Yes.
Whether that's understanding what the demand and ask for when you go see a doctor,
Hmm.
whether that's, to have that connection to your Pilates instructor and say,
Hmm.
hey, I really want to understand what this whole powerhouse thing is and why is it so important, of
Yes. Yes.
holding my body together, so
Yes.
it's all of those things.
Right. Amazing. So in our last 9 minutes here, which flew by like crazy fast,
I know I can talk to you all the time.
this is so good.
So
We talked
good.
about
This
Pilates
is
for
so
like
good.
1 minute. Like we just barely scraped the surface with Pilates. But what are your words of wisdom for our audience, thinking that we have fitness professionals here, people who just want to do better with their overall diet and food in the first place? What are your words of wisdom for us?
Well, I tell especially my professionals that are working with people or
Yes.
working with healing people. Our issue is that we don't stop to heal ourselves.
Yes.
So we're so busy fixing other people that we don't take the time to work on ourselves. I know when I started my Pilates studio, I stopped doing Pilates myself. So because you really start focusing on your clientele and less on yourself. So my words of wisdom to my professionals out there is to take the time out and work on yourself, whether it's to jump on that reformer, whatever it is that you deserve to give yourself that time and work on yourself. If you are a nutritionist, dietitian, like self-check yourself. Like, what did you eat today? I do it to myself all the time because I actually have, like, people probably think a grade school kid lives here and I'm a teacher because I have notes like all over my house to like self-check myself. Like, literally I have sticky notes on my refrigerator door. And it's like, are you really hungry? Just to ask myself, like, before I open this door, am I opening this door because I'm trying to fill a void of what I'm feeling in the emotion? Or am I opening this door because I am really needing food? Like, what am I feeding right now? Like, what am I taking the time out to feed? Is it the emotion I'm trying to feed, or is it my body?
What am I feeding right now?
Yeah.
Boom. That's the word.
Because I tell people, every time you open your refrigerator, you're either feeding your spirit, an emotion, mental, or you really feeding your body. You have to figure out which one you're deciding you're feeding.
Mm-hmm. That's a takeaway.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Or just in general, that could actually be the word. Like, every time you do something, figure out, what are you feeding? Are you feeding yourself? Like I posted today. Are you feeding or fighting?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that.
So in everything you do, whether it's movement, like, why are you deciding to do this movement? Like, is it because I'm really trying to feed myself nutrients and fight off immobility? Because, I got into Pilates because of an injury, but when I read, because I'm such a PhD researcher type of person, that did you know that 85% of the people by age of 40 lose full mobility of their bodies? Just from lack of movement?
Right. Yeah, I can believe it.
So anyway, that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, that's the next conversation. I always say, the whole point of a first date is to get a second date, right? Like the whole point of a first interview is to get a second interview. And we got a second date coming. We got a second date coming because we're just scratching the surface of movement and just overall. We haven't even
got into movement.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. It's been so good chatting with you. We've been trying to get this lined up.
I do have to say one thing, that I really started following you because Real Men Do Pilates. That was like, they do. They do. That was so catchy for me. And I admired it because when I first got into the business, I wanted people to know that Pilates was not a female's deal. It was not. It's a people's deal. And shame on you if you're allowing females to practice Pilates and you're not taking the time to do it yourself. But I see now it's becoming such a open thing, especially when you have celebrities and professional athletes now doing Pilates.
Yes.
And sharing it with the world, that's their secret sauce is Pilates.
Yes.
So that was the attractive factor to me years ago when I saw that Real Men Do Pilates. I was like, they do.
They do. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yes.
Nice. All right, my friend, I'm going to sign you off here. Thanks again for a great conversation today.
Great way to start my morning. That's
no doubt. There you go. Thanks so much. Thank you so much for joining us today on Core Conversations. This organic platform has been made possible by amazing people like yourself. So if you're a Pilates instructor or a movement specialist of some kind and you want to be a guest, please message me. If you're in some other field and the messages just resonate with you, message me. I'd love to have you on. All of our messages connect, and for some reason, they all help us in this battle. We're all in this game together, so I'd love to hear from you. Let your words be life to someone else. Check out our website, personalvictory.ca. Click the Core Conversations page to see who our upcoming guests are, and I will see you next time on Core Conversations.